Welcome to Deep Look, Ultiworld's weekly radio show about the current state of Ultimate. I'm the host and the editor, Charlie Eisenhood. Joining me is Ultiworld's senior editor, Keith Rayner. It is November 7th, and we are, I think it's fair to say we're now like solidly into the off season, Keith. Club is obviously over. We just had the Beach World Championships, so that's in the rearview mirror. We're going to talk about that in just a moment. And, we've got POUC coming up, and then, kind of a couple more college preseason fall tournaments, and then, we're going to shut it down for about 2 months.
I like to watch TikTok before I go to bed, Charlie. Although I've got a new rule, which is no
that's dangerous.
Heavy topics. In no late night in bed TikTok, like no politics, like all that kind of stuff.
Doesn't it just show you whatever it wants? How do you decide that?
You just scroll past it. You just skip it.
Okay.
It's not hard. It's incredibly easy. That's kind of like part of what makes the app addicting is you just keep going. But the point is, I saw a TikTok last night where these two people buried their turtles in an annual rite because the turtles hibernate, these box turtles. So they buried them like 8 feet underground in their backyard. And that's what we're doing.
Like, dig them up in the spring?
Yeah, they like mark the area. They like put some leaves in there to help. Like, it's like they measured out the distance so that it's the right amount of from the surface so they won't be too cold. But this is like supposed to mimic their natural burrowing behavior, I guess. The people seem to know what they're talking about. I didn't know this about box turtles, but there you go. We are entering the period in which we need to be in an 8-foot hole.
Put me 8 feet
Ultimate
under.
itself is in an 8-foot hole about to go to sleep. Wake us up in the spring.
Well, let's talk about the Beach World Championships. They were held in Huntington Beach. It was a beautiful week of Ultimate, and your champions in the open division, USA defeats Spain 13-7 in the final and takes the gold. The women back in the gold medal category after defeating Canada 11-8. That game was pretty close in the first half. And in the mixed division, France beats Spain 12-9. That's right. The U.S. didn't even make the final. They lost to France in the semis in easily the game of the tournament. And Keith, pretty remarkable. We've seen the U.S. teams now, 2 tournaments in a row lose out on a gold medal in one of the divisions. Is there something about it being beach? What's going on here?
I'm sure the beach part seemed, given that the last time we had a similar kind of effect, I'm sure the beach part has part to do with it. You're also talking about a U.S. team that's like literally everybody on it was just playing at nationals a couple weeks ago. I imagine this wasn't like their primary focus, like, cause this team practiced together, I'm sure there's definitely a part of it, but that's all really just window dressing and borderline excuse making, right? France had a single turnover in their game against the U.S. They played exceptionally. Everybody's talking about Elliot Bonnet, the 20-year-old who took over that game. This French team is like half people who are 20 years and under. So it's not like this is some experienced outfit that showed up here or professional beach players or something. They just came out and played an incredible game. Looked awesome doing it. It was a lot of fun to watch. But just another example that the gap between the US and the rest of the world is not as wide, especially the smaller the group. You're talking about 5-on-5 play on teams of 14 where can we say that like you're mostly talking about top 100 players or something in a kind of unusual environment. Like there are a lot of ways that this doesn't play out in the US's favor, I think, versus, we talk about the US having the depth. It's that the US 100th best player or 500th best player, right, is just better than what we're going to see. But at the top, it feels like it's closer and closer together. So these world championship kind of events where teams are bringing out exciting players and top level talent, like I think you're starting to see the tables turn a bit, and the US will remain favorites to be gold in pretty much every event. But like, it's not like it used to be. I think you're getting these upsets are more and more frequent.
Got a good question in the chat, in the Discord. What's more significant, U.S. getting knocked out in semis at Beach, or the U.S. World Games team losing in pool play last year, although they went on to win the gold?
At first, I thought it was obviously losing in bracket play. But we're talking beach, and the World Games is like the premier stage. I think it's the World Games. That feels more telling to me, even though they came around and went on to win. The fact that it's like not a walk in the park for the US, like that feels more telling of that fact than what we saw in the specific environment that beach creates. So yeah, I think it's got to be the Germany game. The World Games is just such a massive stage. You're taking the 14 best players from the participant nations. So like, the US team is basically the best of the best, and that's not good enough anymore to just like coast on. So I think it's got to be the World Games result. I thought it was an interesting note from Liam Grant, who commented that basically like every Worlds tournament is everybody versus the US. It's like the goal is to knock off the US in a lot of cases. So this is like a win for the world, and I think that's fun. But once the US starts getting knocked off more often, it's going to be open season. It's not just going to be target the US. It's going to be, we want golds.
I also think the US will respond if necessary and start actually practicing, because that is one of the differences. You have these beach teams roll up and they've never played together. Man, maybe they did like a weekend thing once or something. But I mean, let's just be honest. Number one, players, particularly in the US, do not care much about Beach Ultimate. This is like kind of a vacation-y tournament. Number two, that is the mixed roster. There were good players on it, but this is not the best roster that the US could send in the mixed division. It's just not. There are players on there who probably shouldn't have been. And, I think you see what happens, which is that you got to give, the US only had 2 turnovers. It's not like it was like some slop fest. France played incredible, but by far the best player in the game was Elliot Bonet, who had a ridiculous 3 goals and 6 assists. Their whole offense played amazing. Their oldest player on their team, Nasser Mbe Vogel, had their 1 turnover. And they caught some breaks too. Like bounces went their way. And the US just couldn't find any traction defensively. Credit to Marquez Brownlee, who got the only block for the US. And it was a good game. 1 break apiece in the first half, and then France broke to win to close it out 13-11 and not have to go to Universe. Incredible game. Definitely go back and watch it. And it was interesting then to watch France go down in the final early against Spain. They were on 5-2, and they just completely obliterated Spain from that point forward. I think it was a 7-1 run from down 5-2. And they were just clearly the best team. Just straight up. It's not like they fluked their way into a win over the US.
I want to go back to the semifinal briefly and then come back to France, because I have more thoughts about France too. But the US had the 2 turnovers. One was just a Harper Garvey missing an around backhand like to space, just undershot it. Maybe that's acceptable in a normal game, but in a game with 3 total turnovers, eating one like that wasn't really he definitely could have executed better on.
Blows up your edge score. Blows it up.
Yeah, absolutely ruins it. But the second turnover was on that final point where they got broken. Simon Higgins upline throw to Luisa Neves, and it was kind of high, and Neves had to try and snag it out of the air and couldn't pull it in. I think you'd probably say that it was Neves's drop, but not an easy catch. But it's the score the other way that caught me off guard. France kind of just like takes a really patient possession and then flubs an OI forehand to the open space, and it just goes right over the head of the receiver. And a diving, saving catch makes that play happen for the US, or for France. And in that moment, I went back and I looked, just like, why is this person the only person in the area to catch this disc? And the US just looks kind of tired. I think that the lack of prep on sand probably meant that the US was not prepared for the demands of playing on beach. I'm certainly no expert on playing Beach Ultimate. That's no one ever questioned that, but I can tell you that it's tiring. That sand is unforgiving when it comes to draining the energy out of the legs.
People looked exhausted.
Mott was the defender in that moment, and he was just kind of like head down, didn't even know the disc was up until after his guy was sprinting to make the catch. And that's just looks like a fatigue mistake to me. So I think it wasn't just Mott. I think it caught up with the team over time. And when you play in a game with 3 turnovers, even the tiniest little errors are massive. So France makes their play. And going back to France, there was some French hype coming out of the U20s. Those French teams were really exciting. And so given that this team is so young, Bonnet's 20 years old, like, what is the future of French Ultimate looking like right now? Like, the hype has got to be off the charts.
Exciting stuff for sure. You love what you see from this roster. And I mean, it feels like Bonnet could be special.
I mean, there's not a like long track record of success for him. I mean, obviously he's a young player, but like he played with Shock at WCCs and like, put up a handful of scores, like nothing that showed you could expect this kind of explosive performance against some of the best players in the US. But just a tremendous tournament from Bonnet, and definitely feels like a really, really dangerous player and the kind of player we're going to be talking about for a while. But how often do we get to see that type of player coming out of, just nowhere? Not to say France is nowhere, but like off our radar totally. Not someone who you're like even hearing our European coverage staff talk a ton about prior to this tournament, but really a breakout performance and definitely tantalizing for what the future of French Ultimate could be. Because we also saw at the World Games, they struggled to keep up with the pace of the entirety of the group, but there were some young players on the team that really were showing out there too. So I think France is definitely a nation to earmark as far as what their future in Ultimate looks like. It feels a little bit like how we felt about Italy a couple years ago when they were going toe to toe with the US in the under 24s. France feels like they're next on that line.
Bonnet had 40 goals and assists in 9 games. That was 25% more than second place, Dmytro Cholkin, who had 32 for Ukraine. So he just did it all tournament. Pretty awesome stuff.
Definitely the MVP of the division, without a doubt.
Open team, undefeated. Women's team, undefeated. They cruised. And there were some tough games along the way. You thought maybe there in the open game that Spain had a chance. They get the early gift. Mario O'Brien drops the pull. Spain gets the early break. And they're in the game. It's like 3-3. It's 4-3. And then it was like 8-3. They just completely had the wheels come off. USA just started sitting on the undercuts. And Spain was unable to do anything to try to attack them over the top. They had no adjustments. And I felt like after US got like 2 breaks, it looked like they completely folded. Body language, terrible. They like stopped trying after turnovers. And I can understand that, right? Psychologically, it's so hard to go up against a team like the US that is just better than you. And it just felt like they kind of let the game get away from them. In the women's game, the U.S. beats Canada. First of all, Brittany Dos Santos and Anushka Beaudry, I mean, holy crap. They were unbelievable this weekend. Unbelievable, including in this game. Canada's right there, Keith. They're right there. They are right there. They have a chance. They give up the break early they were going upwind on O to start. And so then it's all holds the rest of the way through the first half. And so they get the disc pulling downwind on defense to start the second half. And they never put the pull back inbounds. And US starts 5 yards outside the end zone, punches it in. And that was it. That was the game. It was over. Then they got broken, and that was it. Really tough to see that. I sometimes you got to get those little moments right. And they just didn't get that one right. And I also wonder if they should have played more BDS and Anushka earlier in the game to try to get a break. Like the rest of their team just didn't have the horses to like really keep up. And not that they were completely non-factors. Like, Crystal Dos Santos I thought was playing well, but man, they had a chance, Keith. And US just too strong in the end, especially defensively.
Yeah, Anush with 47 total scores, BDS with 39. Crystal Dos Santos was next on the team with 20. I mean, those are preposterous numbers. Like there are 5 players with double-digit scores on this team. I was a little surprised that the Canadian roster didn't have more of the big names that we're used to seeing represent them in international competition. But wow, exactly what you expect from them. And you're like, they're right there. They're right there. I didn't know if you meant like literally in real life, like you're pointing. Canada's right there. It's like, it's not that far away. Hey, Canada needed a W, right? Needed a nice result. We've been giving them a hard time. It's been a tough run lately. Great to see a strong result from a group of players we know are talented and exciting. But I will say that like the game didn't feel that close. That moment that you're talking about, the pulling moment, was about as tight as it felt. But it never really felt like Canada was that was their only real chance. It felt like they were going to wrench away control to me.
I mean, but it was tight. I mean, Canada had
it wasn't like a blowout or anything. But
4 clean 0 points in the first half. I mean, it's not like they were like getting lucky.
No,
I felt like we were in the game. That. They were unlikely to win, but it felt like they had this big opportunity right out of halftime, and they completely botched it.
Yeah, that was a tough look. It was a tough look. The U.S. women's team, however, really very dominant along the way. I mean, they were.
Who impressed you the most? Because there were some kind of surprise names, I would say, on this roster who I thought were fantastic on beach.
I bet you if we 3-2-1 it, we would say the same person, Charlie.
3, 2,
it's Becky Malinowski, right?
Becky Malinowski. Yes, yeah, 100%.
What the heck? Becky Malinowski just absolutely torching everybody. That was a throwback, it felt like. But
she and Lisa P led the
arguably
team.
the most valuable player on the team.
Yeah. She had 25 scores, 14 goals, 11 assists. Lisa P with 22 assists and 4 goals to lead the way for USA. Claire Trope, of course, was fantastic. Dina Elamelic was fantastic, but we know that, right? We expect that. I makes sense that Becky Malinowski is great on beach, but she was better than I would have expected, even given like, oh, she's tall. I mean, she was roasting people. Yeah. She wasn't skying people even necessarily. She was just beating them.
Very impressive performance from Malinowski. Otherwise, the U.S. stats are pretty spread out. This is true for both the men's or the open and women's teams. Although Christian Boxley, very impressive. The whole truck stop contingent on the men's side did quite well. Another throwback name, and speaking of DC, Crystal Davis turning up for 14 goals, Masters eligible. I think she said she's going to retire after this one from Elite Competitive. I don't know what doesn't qualify as Elite Competitive, but just shows up and balls out.
Love it. Well, it was a fun tournament. Really just like being able to watch the games at such a beautiful beach with like such an amazing backdrop of the Pacific Ocean, and like people are surfing, people are like flying kites, just great like visual experience. Such contrast to, for instance, the Canyon Crest High School field with a giant ugly logo in the middle of it for Club Nationals.
Is there an alternate world in which you can imagine like Beach Ultimate being the forerunner, the most presentable spectator packaged version of the sport?
Well, I mean, I think you see this weekend one of the potential visions of what it could be in the Olympics. Because it's like having mixed play on the beach inside of the beach volleyball environment. Just take the nets down and you have a Beach Ultimate field. It works. And I thought the level of play was pretty high. I thought it was pretty interesting. I think the challenge is that nobody's really prioritizing beach anywhere. So strategy is kind of shaky. And especially like early on, there were so many turnovers because everybody was like figuring out the pacing on throws, and like seemed like a lot of people hadn't really played together and they were kind of just showing up. But by the end of the weekend, there were some really high level games, and it's easy for me to imagine that as like a spectator product, this would be an easier sell than Grass Ultimate, even though I personally believe it's far more interesting game on grass.
It feels like there's a multiverse here. There's another place where Beach Ultimate is the preeminent form of Ultimate, and it is treated kind of like a beach volleyball. I think that exists somewhere.
Before we go to break, Keith, the players of the year for the club division have been announced. And so big congratulations going out to Claire Trope in the women's division, playing for Washington, D.C. Scandal. What a season she had. Christian Boxley for Washington, D.C. Truck Stop, and Jade McLaughlin for Fort Collins Shame. I would say those may have been the favorites heading into nationals, and they all did great and earned it at nationals.
Yeah, that probably rings true that those were most of the favorites. I don't know. Club makes probably the hardest to handicap of those three races, but I agree with that. But I think there's not a ton of argument otherwise, especially like maybe in mixed again where the results are kind of mixed up, but I still don't think that there's I haven't seen a lot of people being like, well, this other person should have won. Boxley was tremendous for the best team. Claire Trope is Claire Trope. Valeria Cardenas finished runner-up. I think it was always going to be some sort of 1-2 for them. And McLaughlin, just a fantastic finisher for a Shame team that's just unquestionably the number one team. So it all makes sense.
Did anything surprise you, or did you vote differently on any of these?
I actually had Joe White at the top of my men's ballot, but it felt very 1A, 1B to me. So like I have no qualms with this end result. But yeah, I had Joe White at the top of my men's ballot. I just felt like he's just such a unique role that's asked of him, and he executes at that. But otherwise, I had McLaughlin and Trope at the top of my ballots as well.
It's an interesting contrast a little bit in the style of play that two players have. Joe White, obviously a much more like 1,000 times more accomplished thrower than Christian, but also has a lot of turnovers and like is kind of like a lot more up and down in his level of play. Whereas Boxley like doesn't turn it over. No. How many turnovers does he even have at nationals? He might not have had any turnovers. Might have had 0 turnovers, and is just constantly giving them offensive options, and is an incredible scorer and a great defender after a turnover. I just think when you think about it as like an MVP type thing, if you remove either of those players from their teams, the team gets way worse. And I think that's a good point to like why either would be deserving. I think Joe White was an easy top 3. I think I had him 2 and Rafi Hayes 3 on my ballot.
Which is how it finished. It was Box, White, Hayes.
Hayes was a beast. Oh man, he was a beast for a kind of an underperforming Rhino team. But man, I still feel bad about the year we like didn't recognize him when he was
something tells me he's got more years to be recognized.
Oh my gosh, no kidding. All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, it's mailbag time. Stay with us. It's Deep Look. Welcome back to Deep Look. Keith, I'm not going to be on Deep Look pretty soon. Sorry to let you know.
Finally, getting rid of you.
Getting canned.
I've cut him. He's cut.
That's it. One too many drops in the end zone. See ya. But yeah, my Liz is due November 16th. Today is November 7th. So we're pretty much there, Keith. And I will be out for at least 6 weeks. And so, yeah, I don't, you're going to have to hold it down without me. I know you can. Get some guests. Get some college hot take artists in here to do a little preseason chatter. UNC won the Blue Ridge finale, by the way. You see that?
I did. It was weird to see college results coming in, start thinking about next college season. Now I'm not ready. I'll be honest. I'm not ready.
That's a lie. You're totally ready. What do you say? You're not ready. You're obsessed. Is it going to be weird not to coach?
Yeah, it already is weird not to coach. I mean, like I see the team, someone will send me a message and be like, hey, we did we did X, Y, and Z at this tournament. And it's like weird. I'm not there, but I'm probably gonna go out to a practice, I think, soon. And they're playing near me this weekend. Crazy how when I coach the team and it's an hour away, we never play anywhere nearby. But as soon as I stop coaching the team, playing a fall tournament 15 minutes away. Come on. What are we doing here?
Come on.
But I mean, you made it through the show without me. Now I will have to do the same. Maybe I'll just bring on the subs. We'll just do subscriber hot take session. Just let out your best rants. Maybe we'll just invite the audience on to chill. Just have
talk
a nice
radio
chill
style.
session.
You got to just be ready to hang up on people if they're being clowns. Dump them from the call.
I need like some sound effects, soundboard.
Like hang up on them with a toilet flush sound.
Exactly. Yes.
All right. Well, let's get to the mailbag. I'm not gone yet, so we got a bunch of good questions coming out of nationals, and so let's dive in. Keith, where are we starting?
Let's start with this one. If Dig won quarters, who would have won the men's division championship?
Oh, that's a good one. That one comes from Ravi. Machine.
The other finalist.
Yeah, I mean, I just think they looked to me like the next best team. So Truck played
Ring. Machine played Bravo.
So let's say, okay, presumably the Machine, Bravo result is the same. Maybe there's some butterfly effect thing I'm not understanding. But in the other game, Truck Ring would have been Dig Ring. It's a coin flip game. I mean, I think regardless of who wins, I think Ring's the favorite. Not by much. Let's say Ring wins and it's Ring Machine. Ring does have a good track record against Machine. But I think Machine looked like the most polished team.
Yeah. It feels like a cop out. And Ring was like 2-1 against Machine on the year. And they were 1-0 against Dig. I was impressed Ring managed to do as well as they did. I think I'd also take Machine. Let's say you have Bravo, Machine, Dig, and Ring in semis. Do you think Dig has the worst chance of winning a title out of all four of those teams?
Yes.
Okay.
But like not hugely so. I think they're the bottom of the list, but they're not out of their depth. They would be competitive in all games.
Okay. All right. I buy that. What else you got?
Okay. I think this one's fun. Joel asks, based on this nationals, create a World Games team for the next event in 3 years.
How literal are we taking based on this nationals? Like literally just people who played at and based on how they played at nationals?
I don't know. Sure. But like, let's think about the season overall. Like I would say, where are you with your World Games pick right now? Now that we're through the season and you've seen what happened at nationals, etc. But you're just making a new World Games team.
Got it. For 3 years from now. This is the 2026 or 27 World Games team.
Yep. So let's do the exercise.
Late 26.
Who are you keeping from the previous team? Because they always keep some people.
For sure.
And who are you not keeping? Well, I mean, let's do who you're keeping. I guess they're the same question.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're keeping.
I think there's a good number of people you're not keeping.
Since we're there are. Since we're talking in the men's division, I think you're keeping Jack. You're keeping Goff.
Yep.
You're probably keeping Leaf, and you're probably you're borderline keeping Kotcher. I think Kotcher is going to have his game's going to age gracefully. That said, he has touched a little bit of trouble with health. He wasn't his healthiest at last World Games, but I think those are the four that I think about keeping.
But that leaves out Dylan Freechild, Mickle, and Grant.
Yeah,
I think all those guys are done. I think they're done. I think the question is whether all those the four that you said will stick around.
And you're taking an aged Kotcher at that point. Like Kotcher is
he would be like
30 right now.
4-ish, something like that.
Yeah. So he's borderline to me.
Okay, so let me do the women's side. Claire Trope, obviously. You might as well pencil her in. Unless she quits the sport of ultimate or gets hurt, there's 0% chance she's not going to be on the next World Games team. Man. Other than that, I really don't know. Let me give you the names. Claire Chastain might be aged out. Carolyn Finney, too old. Kayla Helton. I mean, to Kayla's credit, she's playing her best ultimate right now. So I can see her making it again.
It's
just
pretty
because
wild.
she's still balling. But I mean, she will be, 3 years older. Like that's not nothing. But I think she'll make it. I think I say she stays. Sarah Meckstroth, maybe. Carolyn Normile, I don't know. Obviously, age-wise, not a problem, but like I thought it was a surprise when she made it, and I don't necessarily know that she was like the most productive player on the team. Opie Payne, probably aged out, but I don't know. I don't want to count out Opie. But I think I really only have confidence in Trope and Kayla, and like I have like low confidence in Kayla.
Yeah, there's a lot of new spaces for players.
But who are we adding? So we got to think about who we're adding.
All right, is it too early to add Chloe Hakimi?
Yes,
she'll be 19 or whatever. I'm just kidding.
She's one cycle too soon. Who are some people who impressed you a lot at this club season and that you think you'd want?
Well, I mean,
who you're projecting in 3 years to still be like.
I mean, the
top level
the
player.
POTY list is a pretty easy set. I mean, we just saw Christian Boxley be incredible. He's like what 25 or something. 26.
Will they take a guy who's mostly just an O cutter and doesn't really do much throwing?
Yes,
he could be a great defender. Obviously,
I'm very confident that he is a good enough thrower. He's not going to rip open the game with his hucks, but I feel like we felt like Goff wasn't really that great a thrower, and he showed up and had evolved his throwing game. And I think that it looked like Khalif and Dylan took more throwing roles than you would have anticipated coming in. I have little doubt about Box. Rafi Hayes. He was an alternate already.
Ryan Osgar. Brian maybe would be too old, but I thought he was going to make it this past time.
Does he have is he missing the two-way game? Do you think?
Maybe.
I think you might start thinking about JR.
Yeah, oh yeah. That's a good call. I think he's actually feels lockish to me. He has the right game to be on a World Games team.
Exactly.
It's like he can do whatever you need him to do. You want him to be to drive the offense as a handler? No problem. You want him to shut down the other team's best handler? Easy. You need him to just cut at the front of the stack and score goals as a finisher? Easy. That level of versatility is always valued by the coaching staff. And I mean, he's already playing at that level.
And then if we don't take Kotcher, you got room for Joe White. You could also mix that up.
He's going to be an interesting one. But talent-wise, it's not even a question. But like, will he show up and like be consistent and play within the team and all of those things?
Look, they just ran through Dylan Freechild, right? He was just like their leading touch guy. Like they could take somebody who could go out there and play aggressive. And to be fair, Joe White had 5 turnovers at nationals. Like this is he may be shaking the reputation.
He's getting there, isn't he? What about Alex Atkins?
I mean, yeah.
Game wise, his game is there. I mean, he's super talented.
Yeah, and he's huge. I mean, he's big. He can throw. He can play defense. I mean, what about Ben Dameron? Ben Dameron's all club player, and he's
Don
24
Colton,
years,
question mark?
No, I mean, you might not need a question mark. Have we found a new Cammy Groom? Is that what we did?
Let me take a look here. Man, so many of the all club players this year, international. Little sneak preview of all club. How about Caroline Tornquist? She's kind of a sneaky one, but she had an awesome nationals.
She did. She has a real breakout kind of campaign this year. So definitely a player to watch. To me, I think I would think about like Dina as one of my first picks.
Yeah. I think Dina, Claire Trope, and maybe that's like the list of people who I feel like are super locks on the women's side. And then on the men's side, I think Jack Williams, JR feel like the lockiest to me.
I think I like Don Colton's chances.
I do too. Just like explosive athleticism is such a huge piece to have.
And has developed the two-way game that I think they look for.
And it's going to be perfect because she's going to get this season at UNC here. where she is the straight up number one option. And there's not, other players who are getting more of the touches, or like more of the highlight on offense. Alex Barnett and Ella Youngst were big, heavy usage players last season, but they're gone. So it's like all Dawn. And so like, let's see how she can run an elite team on her own. And I think if it goes well, it's going to be like, okay, it's Dawn's time. What about Lindsay Sue?
I was thinking like, Lindsay Sue, Anna Thompson.
I was surprised Anna Thompson didn't make it last time.
Well, that makes me think of a person
Eric Taylor. Don't forget about
Eric
Taylor.
Did we miss Henry Ying?
Ooh.
Is he too young?
Ooh, no, he won't be too young in 3 years. But like, you can't have there's only so many giant guys they're going to take, right? They can't take Joe White and Henry Ying and Alex Atkins and Nate Goff. They're not going to do it.
Sort of, except that they're not necessarily, these are not one-dimensional big men. Like, we think of this as being that big man role, the big deep threat, the guy who roofs everybody. Why can't you have 4 of those guys if 3 of them are handlers? Like Alex Atkins and Joe White operate from the backfield, right? Like, you want to deal with whatever Nouveau France is throwing out there? Bring some size. Elliot Bonet's fast, but we're big.
I'm compelled. The next World Games team is going to be really good. I feel like this past World Games team was a little old.
It did feel a little that way, and I wonder if they stay that way. I wonder if they continue to stick to a little more experience.
I think we're going to see
other players.
I think we're in the midst of an era change right now, and by the time we get to tryouts in 2 years, it's going to feel like, the players that we've been talking about for a decade they're either not playing anymore or they're role players now, and this new crop is here.
That or Cammie Groom is still an alternate somehow.
How? That's crazy. Cammie was like arguably the second best player. Cammie was unbelievable this season at Nationals, dominating.
Angela Zhu is another player I'm thinking about.
Yep.
Like if I were to pick today, I think these are players who could end up making this list. There's probably a surprise or two. So
let's move on. At some point, we'll actually make our projections, but it's a little early for that. 3 years out.
I think that's the idea of the question.
Well, we gave our thoughts.
Yes, we did. Okay. Our next question. This one comes from Hello Goodbye. To what extent are the best 2 teams in finals, and does this vary across division? And then extending that question out to potentially 4 best teams in semis, 8 at quarters, 16 at nationals. To what extent do you feel like we're really getting the best 2 teams in the field at nationals in finals?
Probably 75% of the time. Here's my logic. Typically, the best teams are going to make it far, right? But you could have the second best team facing the best team in semis and getting knocked out. Or even quarters, if some weird stuff happens in pool play. It can happen. But most of the time, the seeding from the season is truthful and gives us the best teams avoiding each other until finals, assuming things go to seed. So I think maybe 75 is a little high, but I would say it's over 50%. So maybe like 60% of the time. And, I think it's almost inarguable that the best 2 teams were there in the women's division this year. Brute wasn't the best team during the regular season, but they and Scandal were clearly the best teams at nationals. It wasn't close. And then mixed, we had Shame and Hybrid. I would say that was not the best 2 teams, but there's definitely evidence that Hybrid was the second best team. And then in the men's division, I don't know. I really think Truck and Machine looked apart to me.
Yeah, but you'd be hard pressed to say the Machine looked like that all year. It was in flashes until nationals, and to some degree, the same could be said of Bravo. There was. This is a more. I feel like up until like the past 5 years, it was a real high percentage. I mean, mostly because it was Fury and Revolver all the time, right? Like they were clearly the best teams. They were always in finals. The Brute Squad was the same way, right? Like
but sometimes you had the
coming out of this period of dynasties that then the percentage was high. I mean, because you basically could count on the best teams being in finals. Like that's just the way it was. And I think that now that there's more parity, the difference between the best team and the second best team and the third best team and the fourth best team is smaller and smaller and smaller. So even though one team might, like by definition, be a better team, it's less likely for them to reach the final. Plus the formatting stuff that you're talking about of like, you also have to have a great regular season and be the best team so that you can have the right seed, so that you don't have to play against this team in pool play and that, or in bracket play and the semis or too early or whatever. And then everybody has to do their part to win their seeding. Like there's a chance that you get the wrong matchups. And that's more prevalent now, I feel like, than it used to be. So I think that recently you're seeing that percentage of times where we get the two best teams, you're seeing that percentage go down.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's probably fair. And the teams are getting closer together, which means that there's more likelihood of upsets happening and knocking out top teams earlier in the tournament. I mean, look at Pool A in the men's division this year. You had 3 semifinalists. So it's hard to say, but last year, before the final, I would have said that the de facto final was Truck Pony and that Bravo, good for them, they made it, but then they won. So what do you do with that? I don't know. I think they backed it up this year by going to semis again. I think that they just are legitimately really good. I love that they're a team that is kind of defense first.
This could be an interesting run for Bravo. There's a lot of young core pieces for them.
Definitely. Speaking of, how would we view the Atkins-Bansfield interaction differently if Dylan Freechild hadn't popularized spiking and changed that norm over the last decade?
I mean, we would be vilifying Atkins more. I mean, I come from a time where spiking was a jerk thing to do, and there was a lot of the way that people see the international community respond to spiking on Twitter is like how the general populace in America used to respond to spiking, or I said Twitter, but I meant Instagram. Whenever we post something and it's got a big spike, and there are a lot of players from around the world in our Instagram who talk about how it's unspirited or act like you've been there before, this mentality. That's how everybody used to think. We weren't allowed to spike when I was in high school. It's wild to me that some of these former Pioneer kids, I'm watching Ben Dameron go nuts after every play. He's getting in people's faces like that. That's not how it was when I was a kid at Pioneer. We weren't supposed to do that kind of stuff. But the culture of the game has changed, and definitely the conversation around spiking has changed. So I think vastly different. People weren't getting cards back then, but that spike could have been a carded spike back then because the observers were following kind of the culture of the sport too. That would have been seen as a real unspirited act. And now it's just day to day.
Standard procedure. I think that's true. I think people would have been even more appalled, though, at the shove than they were this time around when Bansfield got a hero's welcome coming back to the game during the final.
Yeah, but I don't want to conflate the way Bansfield was treated in the final with how people felt about the shove. They were not cheering him on because he shoved Alex Atkins. They were cheering him on because
that's true.
It was funny, and he played for Machine, who was the underdog. And he's a popular player. It wouldn't have mattered if he had gotten carded for a bad bid. I think people might have still responded the same way. Or if he had gotten multiple yellows for calling too many travels, whatever. Yeah, same difference.
What's next?
For this question, has the success of the Empire and the AUDL been to the detriment of Pony, as players who play for both teams have to fulfill their contractual obligations to the Empire and miss valuable reps for Pony throughout the season? That comes from Caesar.
Absolutely. 100% yes. I think it is directly connected to Pony's underperformance. How can you look at this roster and tell me that if they played a full season together and they all got reps together for a whole year, like, for instance, Truck and Breeze, basically the same teams, or if you look at Chicago, most of those guys didn't play AUDL at all. I think for sure it's costing Pony right now. And I'm not sure what they're going to do about that. Because in the past, they've had it where they didn't take those players, right? They didn't take Empire players. And then they kind of did the hybrid thing. But, then they had pro champs, for instance, they were missing a ton of players, even though that was after the AUDL season. Because, people had a wedding and they wanted to take a vacation and whatever else. But like Pony barely got reps together at top tournaments as a team. And I never thought their offense looked like fully put together at any point. So it feels to me like they have to figure out what they're going to do about that, because the Empire understandably has expectations around attendance when they're compensating players at the highest level in the league. But I do think it's affecting Pony. They might not say it, but I think behind closed doors they would.
To me, it seems a little more complicated than that. Like at the surface, I get what you're saying, but I also think the fact that there has been this kind of shifting, I don't want to say conflict, but friction, tension between the two groups. You have some players who don't want to play, and then you've had the changing policies and how that's treated. To me, that speaks to a little bit of discord, and that also is potentially creating some of the problems. Is more of an issue than necessarily like reps together. Alternatively, though, like, is Ben Yacht the player that Ben Yacht is for Pony if he didn't have his Empire reps? Does Ryan Osgar play with Pony at all if he wasn't playing with Empire? Does Jack Williams? Are some of the players you developed, is Marquez Brownlee or Jabron Meeser, like, are those the same players if they're not getting the opportunities they got in the AUDL with the Empire? I don't think they are. So I think it's a little more, I think if like you're saying, is Empire a net zero or net negative for Pony, which maybe is not where you're arguing, then I think I take issue with that, because I think that there's been a lot of benefits to New York's rise that have coincided with the Empire's rise too.
Of course. I agree with that. If you're talking about personnel and just overall game reps, sure. But I think that if you had the same roster and they all played Empire and Pony together, or none of them played Empire and they all played Pony and they only played Pony, and that was the focus of their season, I think they win the national championship comfortably.
Yeah, in a vacuum this year, yeah, I think I probably agree with that.
I was just thinking about it right now.
Could have kept some of these guys healthy.
I was just thinking about it right now. I'm like, the Empire destroyed everybody, right, in this AUDL season. They killed a really good DC team in an amazing performance in the East Final, and then they just mopped teams at championship weekend. But then I was thinking to myself, like, the teams they played at championship weekend are just like not close to the best teams at Club Nationals. Like, the Empire legitimately would be a semifinals team at Club Nationals. The rest of these teams, like, where would Salt Lake be at Club Nationals? Do they make it?
On the quarters?
Do they make nationals out of the Northwest?
Oh, yeah, that's tough. I don't know. I think they're like a pre-quarters team.
They could make a team, right? They had a team. The bonus COVID year when they got an extra bid and they made it, and they were fine. But I'm not convinced they make it.
That team was less talented than Salt Lake is, in my opinion, and younger. I think that this team looks a little more seasoned. Having
Grant was monstrous. I mean, you could see it like at championship weekend. It was like, Grant, please save us. I'm not saying they're not a good team. They're a good team. They're just not at the caliber that you see at the national championships. And this is just like a truth of the AUDL right now. And frankly, I think it's a kind of a long-term problem for the AUDL that they're having a hard time recruiting the best players to play in their league. But I just think overall, the Empire's level of sort of focus and required attendance and all of that detracts from Pony's ability to get the most out of those players and coalesce as a team. Because they had all the pieces, they just didn't coalesce as a team.
It's fair. All right, let's stick with Pony, because we got some questions about Pony. They're definitely all right. There was basically a small Pony mailbag in here. What happens to Pony now? Should we be expecting a bunch of retirements? Is this the beginning of the end for Pony?
Man, it matters so much what players decide to do that are not those tail end of career players. I think, guys like Sean Keegan, maybe this is it.
This
He
team
was dealing with
was
injuries.
old.
They're on the older side. You know, you remember back to like them winning US Open, but like at US Open, they had Grant Lindsley, who was not actually playing with the team in the series. So some of these guys are going to be gone, I do think, but that's maybe just a natural retirement age, not necessarily specifically tied to them not winning or something. But then it's like guys like, you know, what's Mikkel going to do? Do the players who are sort of newer to the team stay another year? From what I've heard, people seem positive. I mean, wasn't it BVH that said like we're feeling good and we like want to run it back? So we will see. I think that they'll still be fine because they have a lot of really good younger players. But they need, you know, Jack Williams and Ryan Osgar to stick around the team. And I think they probably will. So I think Pony's going to give it one more shot. If it doesn't work next year, then I think we're going to see the team change a lot. That's my prediction.
I mean, I don't know whether to worry about the old bodies giving out or the spirit giving out. I mean, this has been an emotionally exhausting run for them, I think.
I mean, it's been 5 years since they won the title, despite the fact they've been the favorite at least 2 of the last 3 seasons. All right. Do we have another Pony one or is that it? I think that's it.
I think there's let's see. I got some new stuff for you. Got some new Pony stuff for you.
Okay.
If Pony comes back with a similar or better roster, what's your way too early prediction for them for 2024? Let's say they run it back.
Oh my God. I mean, they're still going to be the favorites. Sure, give me Pony. They'll figure out how to manage the Empire thing better this year.
I don't know, man. After what I've seen,
are you done with them?
They'll be in the mix, but like I don't know if I could put them with a bullet. I could see them maybe being number 1 going into the season, but like in a arm wrestle with the likes of Bravo and Truck and Machine and Ring, like it's going to be hard to peg a odds out favorite.
Is Truck gonna be the same team?
I don't know. Are they gonna have the hunger? I mean, they definitely have a lot of young guys. Like that
they're still going to be really good.
Take steps forward, right? Like,
but Rowan's not coming back.
Yeah, and Rowan's really good, but like, I feel like they have guys kind of waiting in the wings to get even better, I mean, especially on the D line. Or like, you look at guys like AJ Merriman and Alexander Fall and Musa Ja. Like, these are players who can take steps forward. And then on the O line, you got Malks and Jurek, Andrew Roy, Jock Nissen. Like, these are all young guys who are going to get better.
That's true. All building around Boxley. It's yeah, they're going to be really good. Pony's going to go into the lab though. I mean, they're going to work on strategy stuff starting now. So much talent. All right, let's move on. Let's talk about Brute. Against Brute, this one comes from Mott. Key players on other teams had extremely poor stat lines. Let's take a look at the bracket. Flip side. Jesse O'Connor, 1 assist, 5 turns. Kayla Helton, 1 assist, 3 turns. Fury, Carolyn Finney, 1 assist, 1 block, 9 turns. Scandal, Lizzie Laurie, 0 assists, 4 turns. Marge Walker, 2 assists, 7 turns. These are some of the best players in the game. What do you think Brute is doing different in terms of preparation that other teams aren't? Is it conditioning, a dedication to film, coaching, or something else?
It's as much as it pains me to give you this answer, it's probably a little bit of everything. But the other thing you're missing is talent. Got a lot of talent. The thing that all those players have in common, basically, with the exception of Kayla Helton, is they're all handlers. Like, they play great handler defense, and they were playing particularly great handler defense at Nationals. Now, that's been a hallmark of Boston Brute Squad for years, and I think that's also part of it, is there's a culture of being a defensive-minded team, of being a team that takes a lot of pride in how you play defense. And so you see that get passed on through the coaching staff, through the leadership, the type of players that are on the team, through the way those players approach the game. So that could be conditioning and film and coaching, like all of those things come together. Can I also add, it was pretty windy. So like, yeah, they forced 16 combined turns out of Finney and Walker, the main handlers for their opposition in the semifinals. It was windy. there was a lot of turnovers. There was like 50 turnovers in each of those games. So, I don't want to just take those numbers and stack them up against how other players fared as handlers against other defenses in history. It was great defensive performance, not taking anything away from that, but I think those numbers can make it look extra shiny when they're probably not necessary to like emphasize a team that was winning with an awesome defense, with great defensive talent, but also a history of playing great defense that is not by accident, that is by design. That's like a programmatic element that we see year in and year out for Bruce Glenn.
What's the court say in Miami Heat? I'll read it for you. You see this, Keith?
God. Yes.
The
so
Heat's
bad.
new culture court: hardest working, best conditioned, most professional, unselfish, toughest, meanest, nastiest team in the NBA. That's written on their court. Brute Squad needs to paint that on their practice field. But I mean, there's some
they
similarities
should put it on their
there.
Jerseys.
That'd be sick.
Their warm-ups.
I think you're right. The first thing I thought of about this question is that like Brute has a culture of defense that has been a part of the team and the focus of the team for a long time through their championship years and the years they don't win. And what made the difference this year was that they brought that level of defense. And it's not just the handler defense, Keith. Remember, I think in the post-game interview, there was some discussion from Scandal players that's like the turnovers weren't on Walker. It's because she didn't have options. So sure, she had the turnovers because she had the disc, but like it was coverage sacks and just overall general pressure that was taking teams way out of their comfort zone and forcing them to do things they didn't want to do. And when you do that, plus wind equals a lot of turnovers. And that's what happened. Why specifically they seem to level up so much, I don't know. But I think I want to give credit to some individual players who I think made their D-line really good. And look at Carolyn Tornquist. I and everybody wants to say Carolyn. Stop. It's Caroline. My mother's name is Caroline.
In the Discord.
No, I know. Which I'm actively correcting it right now and trying to fix my brain. Caroline Tornquist. My mom hates it when people call her Carolyn. So sorry, Caroline. She was amazing. 3 blocks. Lena Troutman was amazing. Angela Zhu was incredible. I mean, Amy Zhou didn't even have a registered block in the final. That might not be true, but like from the official stats. But she had like a crazy layout D on the mark at one point. She is just a nasty defender. I mean, they're just up and down the roster. Yeah, that was in semis.
She had a bunch of blocks in semis. Yeah.
They have a lot of nasty individual defensive players. And when you combine that with good team scheme and practice and preparation, this is what you get.
Yeah, I don't think this will be the last time we're talking about Boston Brute Squad's defense.
What's next?
All right. Let's talk about pre-quarters, Charlie. Is it time to remove pre-quarters, the absolute worst round of nationals? I don't know if this is an argument for power pools. I see all the old heads are always like, bring power pools back. Or should we anticipate that as the depth of talent continues to grow, that pre-quarters will steadily become more interesting? That comes in from Mott, and the bit about power pools was my own editorializing, not Mott.
Look, we're not going back to power pools, so sorry, folks. It's not happening. I think it's much better to have pre-quarters than not have them. Especially in a world where we're going to do the randomized seeding, you have to have pre-quarters. If you only have 2 teams advance out of each pool, you're going to miss out on the good teams. Like Truck Stop doesn't make the bracket without pre-quarters. That doesn't make any sense to me. I don't know that necessarily like pre-quarter. I feel like weren't the pre-quarters really good last year, Keith? I think they happen to be not that good this year, but I don't think that's always the case.
I think we had 3 out of 12 games were decided by less than 5 goals.
In theory, pre-quarters should be better with randomized seeding and like the buckets. So I just think that was like maybe this year was randomly not especially good, but that's crazy to throw them out.
Yeah, it does. It though. It if they are just going to be mostly blowouts, like how many of those blowouts is it worth to unearth the good game? I get the idea. I also, it's
not about the good game. It's about getting the best teams into the bracket.
I also like kind of recoil at the concept, but I can't decide how much of that's just because like I'm used to pre-quarters being there, and I kind of agree that you should have to finish top two, but like, is it that bad to finish top two in your pool?
On three-way point diff situations, I do think it's like unfairly punishing.
Three-way point diff's tough
to have teams missing the bracket entirely in a strong pool because they lost on point diff. The way to
that part's true.
Pre-quarters solves for insufficient seeding. And if a team is coming in and blowing out the other team in the pre-quarter, then clearly the better team advanced. And we should want the best teams in the bracket.
Plus, if you remove pre-quarters, you make winning the pool less valuable, which maybe it's good or bad, depends on how you look at it.
I like the bonus for winning the pool.
Yeah, I think it's good.
Okay, let's see.
I'm kind of surprised we don't have more questions about the draw. There's no like, did you like the draw question?
All right, last question for today, Keith. But we are going to take more mailbag in our sub bonus section out the back. Make sure you sign up for an Ulti World subscription. You can get any level of subscription to get access to our podcast bonuses. Go to ultiworld.com/subscribe. Less than $5 a month to jump in. We got a bunch more great mailbag questions to get to, but last one for the main show here. Which team raised their ceiling the most with their international pickups? Another question from Mott. Some teams that Mott is thinking of. Tullett and Haberfield on Chain. Walchak, Troutman, Ospina on Brute. The Cardenas twins on Molly Brown. Cartagena and Montagna on Bent. Mark Evans on Double Wide. Why do you think women's teams are having more international players coming to play? Well, that's kind of a separate question. So let me hold off on that. Just which team raised their ceiling the most with their international pickups? What do you think, Keith?
It's actually pretty hard. Raise their ceiling specifically. It's tough for me between Molly Brown and Brute Squad. I actually think if you want to talk about floor, that's probably Bent. Like, I think Bent's pickups like really feel like they changed a lot there. But for ceiling specifically, like I can't really imagine Denver winning a title without Motto and Volley. Like I just don't know. There's still a bunch of talent on the team though, so it's not like that they would be bad, but are they just back to being a team trying to fight for semis? It kind of feels like that. But Livka Volchuk and Lily Trauman, Ospina, Manji, like they were all great for Brute. So I don't know if Brute wins a title. Brute does not win a title without them either. So, man, that is hard. I think I'm gonna go Brute because of volume too, even though it feels pretty apt for Molly Brown. But I'm gonna go with Brute Squad, and I know they won the title.
I mean, looking back, Cardenas twins made a real big difference for Molly to win their title last year. But I think for this season specifically, you got to go Brute. Because let's take a look at this. Brute Squad had 7 losses this year. They lost to Mud and Fury twice at US Open. They lost to Phoenix, Scandal, and Molly at Pro Championships. Got beat down. They lost by 8 to Scandal. Lost by 6 to Phoenix. Then they added their players, and then they come out and look incredible in the bracket. Walchak had 19 assists and 6 goals at Nationals. Troutman, 11 goals, 4 assists, 8 blocks. Angela Zhu led the team in blocks. But Troutman second on the team, despite not playing at US Open. So to me, I think it's obvious, right? Brute was like a good but not great team at US Open, and then they won the title. And the difference was that they picked up some really critical international players.
Yeah, I think Brute's the answer. There's some other good pickups though. Like, I don't know that you mentioned that you weren't going to go into the second premise, but I don't even know that I agree with the idea that the women's division had more. I mean, yeah, you also had like Kanari Manishi and the players on Sixers, but like, they were a little more scattered in the men's division, right? Like, I mean, you had 2 in the final. You had Connor McHale and Ben Ort in the finals, right? So there were definitely some around around other teams too.
All right, well, more to come in our subscriber bonus segment. So join us out the back. Get your private RSS feed when you're an Ulti World subscriber, and we will continue the discussion there. That'll do it for this edition of Deep Look. For Keith Rayner, I'm Charlie Eisenhood saying so long, and we will talk to you next week right here on Deep Look.